Hi everyone, and welcome to Hontora. If you're new here, make sure you hit that subscribe button. This is the place where we explore the darkest, most deeply unsettling, true horror stories the internet has to offer. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Genuinely glad you're here. I'll say this up front. I don't always know what draws me to certain stories over others. Sometimes it's the details. Sometimes it's the silence around the details. What's left out, what nobody bothered to explain. The two I'm bringing you tonight both have that quality, and I've been carrying them around for a while now, waiting until it felt right. Before we go any further, thank you. Not in a scripted way, just genuinely. The people who keep coming back to this channel, who actually sit with these stories instead of just consuming them, that's not nothing. That means something to me, and I want you to know that. Links are at the top of the description as always. Easy to find. 2 stories tonight. The first one got under my skin in a slow, creeping kind of way. The kind where you don't realize how unsettled you are until it's already over. The second one I'm still not sure how to talk about. I've tried a few times. I don't think I can do it justice. You'll see why. Drop something in the comments when you're done. Tell me what hit you or didn't, or what you're still thinking about. I read every one. Now, lights down, find somewhere comfortable, and let's get into it. Viewer discretion is advised. 2 men found me on a mountain trail. They knew my name. They walked with me for over an hour. And when I finally turned around to ask them how they knew it, one of them was already gone. The other one wasn't looking at me. I'm not someone who spooks easily. I want to get that out there before anything else. Because the kind of story I'm about to tell you, it sounds like the kind of thing a nervous person tells. Someone who was already scared before they went in. I'm not that. I've hiked alone since I was 19. I've spent nights in the backcountry without a tent, without cell service, without another soul within 10 miles, and slept fine. I'm a project manager. I think in systems and contingencies. If something goes wrong, I make a list. I problem solve. I do not panic, which is why it took me so long to understand what was actually happening. It was early September. A group of 8 of us, co-workers mostly, with 1 or 2 partners thrown in, had rented a set of cabins near a trail system in the mid-Atlantic range. Nothing dramatic. Rolling ridge lines, hardwood forest, elevation modest enough that you didn't need technical gear. We'd done a trip like this 2 years before, and it had been easy and social and exactly what it was supposed to be. This one was supposed to be the same thing. A long weekend, a way to decompress before Q4. We started the morning trail early, around 6:30. The fog was heavy. Not unusual for that elevation at that hour. It sits in the low points, hugs the ridge line, burns off by 9 or 10. We'd been told that at check-in. We signed a trail registry at the trailhead. Name, party size, emergency contact, expected return. Standard. I remember writing my name clearly because the pen was running low on ink and I had to press hard. About 45 minutes in, I fell behind. Not by much. The group had rounded a curve along a narrow switchback section and I'd stopped to adjust a bootlace. Maybe 90 seconds total. When I stood up and followed the curve, the trail opened into a broad saddle, the kind of flat open area between 2 ridges, and the fog had thickened to the point where I could see maybe 30 feet in any direction. I could hear voices ahead, or what I thought were voices. I walked toward them. The voices didn't get closer. I stopped, listened. Nothing. The rational thing was obvious. I'd gone slightly the wrong direction on the saddle. Trails and fog do that. The visual reference points disappear and you drift. I pulled out my phone to check the trail app and saw I had 1 bar, intermittent. The map loaded partially. I was maybe 80 meters off the marked trail. Fine. I corrected my bearing and walked. That's when I heard them behind me. 2 men, hiking at a steady pace. Orange safety vests over base layers, the kind of vests that have the reflective stripe across the chest. They looked like they were in their 40s, maybe early 50s, fit, purposeful. One of them was carrying a radio on his belt. The other had a clipboard, which struck me as odd for a trail, but I didn't dwell on it. "There she is," one of them said. Not "there's someone," not "hey." There she is, like they'd been looking. They introduced themselves. SAR volunteers, search and rescue. They said they were doing a sweep of the saddle because there'd been reports of hikers getting disoriented in the fog. Would I like them to walk me back to the main trail? I said sure. I said thank you. I said I probably hadn't been off more than 10 minutes. 20 actually, the one with the clipboard said, and smiled. Helpful smile. The kind you'd give a nervous kid. I thought, okay, I lost track of time. That happens. I thought, trail registry. They have my name from the trail registry. That's their job. They checked the registry before the sweep. They saw my party. They're being thorough. That's not strange. That's good. That's exactly how it should work. So I walked with them. Here's the thing about the next hour that I've thought about almost every day since. It felt completely normal. We talked. They asked about the group, how long we were staying, whether we'd done the North Ridge before. They were warm, knowledgeable. One of them mentioned a waterfall about 2 miles further that most people missed. I remember thinking I'd mention it to the group, but here are the things I didn't register in real time. Only later, when I was sitting in a lit room, trying to reconstruct the sequence. They never used a radio. It was on his belt the whole time. Never touched. They never asked for my emergency contact. If you're search and rescue and you've located a separated hiker, the first thing you do is confirm they're okay and log the recovery. You radio in. You tell someone found her, she's fine. He never touched the radio. They knew my last name. I'd caught it once. One of them said my full name, first and last, in a sentence I don't even remember now. I'd let it slide. Trail registry, I'd thought, but the trail registry only takes a first name. The fog started breaking around 8:15. As we came over the lower ridge, I could see the valley below, and I could see the rest of my group standing near a break in the trees, all 7 of them, waiting. I raised my hand and one of them waved back. That's when I realized something was wrong. Not a feeling, a fact. If my group had realized I was missing and called for SAR, 8 people wouldn't be standing casually in a clearing. There would be rangers, there would be vehicles at the trailhead, there would be that specific awful texture of a situation that has gotten official. I've seen it once before, years ago, different trail, different state. It doesn't look like 7 people standing calmly in the morning sun. And I'd only been gone 20 minutes. They said so themselves. Nobody calls search and rescue 20 minutes after someone falls behind on a popular trail. That's not how any of this works. My mouth went dry. I turned around. One of the men was gone, not walking away, not visible through the trees, just not there. The trail behind me was clear for 200 feet in both directions. He'd been 2 steps behind me 30 seconds ago. The other one wasn't looking at me. He was looking at my group in the valley, and he was counting them. I watched his lips move, slow, deliberate, his head moving just slightly left to right, the way you do when you're making sure you haven't missed one. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask where his partner went. I didn't ask the question that was already sitting at the back of my throat like something I'd swallowed wrong. I just walked down the slope, into the clearing, straight into the middle of my group. I grabbed the arm of the person closest to me and I said quietly, "Don't look behind you. Just walk back toward the trailhead. Now, please." She looked at my face and she walked. We all did. I told my story to 2 different rangers at the trailhead station. Neither of them had dispatched a search and rescue sweep that morning. No sweep had been called for our trail. The registered SAR volunteers for that district were all accounted for. 3 people, none of them matching the description I gave. They took my statement, they took descriptions, they walked the saddle trail twice and found nothing. No footprints that didn't belong to our group. No discarded gear. Nothing. The ranger I spoke to longest didn't seem as surprised as I expected. She wrote everything down carefully and asked if the men had touched me or made any threats. They hadn't, chill. She nodded. She said they'd flag it and pass it up the chain. She used the phrase persons of interest once. She didn't elaborate. I asked her before I left whether this kind of thing happened, whether people did this, posed as SAR, intercepted hikers, learned their names somehow. She looked at me for a moment and then she said, "More than you'd think. Usually it's nothing." She paused. Usually. I've looked at trail registries differently since then, the way they sit there at the trailhead, open, full name, party size, expected return, everything someone would need to pick a specific person out of a crowd, everything someone would need to sound official, sound prepared, sound like they were supposed to be there. The waterfall they mentioned, I looked it up. It doesn't exist on any map of that trail system. I still hike. I went back out 6 weeks later, different state, different terrain. I'm not going to let it take that from me. But I move differently now. I track my group. I count them. Occasionally, in the quiet stretches, I notice myself doing it the way he did it. Slow, methodical, left to right. And I stop. Because that's the part that won't leave me. Not that he was watching my group, but that he seemed very calmly to be deciding whether he had enough time to go back for one more. I'm a planner. That's the first thing you need to understand about me. I don't wing trips. I don't wing anything. I had the permit printed, laminated, and clipped to the outside pocket of my pack 6 days before I left. I had a color-coded gear checklist. I had a contingency route mapped if the main trail was flooded. I'm the kind of person who reads the regulation pamphlet, not because I'm paranoid, because I genuinely enjoy the system. Rules exist, I follow them, everything works out. That's always been my operating principle, which is exactly why what happened took so long to make sense to me. It was mid-September, solo backcountry trip, 5 nights, a loop route through a national forest I'd been researching for the better part of a year. The kind of place that requires a permit months in advance, and I mean months. I'd applied in the lottery window in March, got my confirmation in April, printed it in April, laminated it in April. The designated campsite for night 2 was a spot called W14. Flat ground, creek access, no prior reviews mentioning bear activity. Perfect. I hit the trailhead at noon and made good time. The weather was exactly what the forecast had promised. Overcast, around 55 degrees, low wind. That particular quiet you only get in dense forest when it isn't quite raining but the air is carrying the weight of it. I was in a good headspace, moving well, eating a granola bar every 90 minutes, like a normal, functional human being. I reached W14 around 4:30. There was already a tent there. My first reaction, and I want to be specific about this, was mild annoyance, not alarm, annoyance, because I had the permit. Somebody had made a mistake, and now I was going to have to either share the site, which I didn't want to do, or find the next one down the trail in fading light, which I also didn't want to do. The tent was a good one, high-end, the kind of 3-season shelter that costs more than my first car payment. There was a neat little gear arrangement around the fire ring, a titanium pot, a fuel canister, a stuff sack folded with almost military precision. Whoever was here was experienced. They knew what they were doing. He came out of the tree line about 2 minutes after I arrived. Medium height, maybe mid-40s, wearing a technical fleece and pants with too many pockets. Easy smile. He introduced himself immediately, didn't hesitate, held out his hand, said he'd been using this site for years, that the permit system was new, that he hadn't realized W14 specifically required advance booking. He apologized. He said he'd be out by dawn, no problem at all. I asked to see his permit. He laughed a little, said he didn't have one, said he was old school, didn't really do the online system. Then he said something like, "But honestly, we both got the site for tonight, if you're not picky about company." I should have pushed harder on the permit. Instead, I set my pack down. He had a camp stove. He had extra food, way more than a solo backpacker. typically carries. He offered to cook. Freeze-dried pasta and a genuinely good instant soup. We talked about gear, about the trail conditions, about nothing important. He was funny, self-deprecating. He asked me about my route, seemed interested. I walked him through it. All 5 nights, the loop, where I planned to camp each night. He nodded along like someone who knew the area. At some point, he asked if I had any family waiting on updates. I said I had an emergency contact card in my wallet. My brother. He gets a check-in text each morning, and if he doesn't hear from me by noon, he calls the ranger station. The man nodded. Smart, he said, real smart. We turned in around 9. Separate tents. I was tired. I went out fast. I woke up at 5:15 because the birds had gone quiet. Not dawn quiet, something else. I unzipped my tent. His tent was gone, not packed up and left. Gone. No ground marks, no flattened grass where the stakes had been, no ash disturbed in the fire ring, like he'd been extracted. I stood there in the gray pre-dawn and genuinely could not process what I was looking at, because the absence was too clean. Even a fast packer leaves something behind. A forgotten wrapper, a scrape in the dirt. There was nothing. I went for my pack. The front pocket, the one I always keep zipped, was open about 2 inches. I put my hand in. My permit was there. My phone, my multi-tool, my wallet was there. But the emergency contact card was gone. The small laminated card I keep behind my license with my brother's name and number on it. And the photo, the one I keep folded in the billfold section. It's old, worn at the creases. Me and my dad at a trailhead, maybe 15 years ago. Not something anyone would want. Not something with any value. Gone. I stood at that campsite for a long time, and I did what I always do. I tried to explain it. Maybe it fell out. Maybe it slipped through a hole I hadn't noticed. Maybe I'd left the card at home and was misremembering. I opened the wallet 4 times, checked the same empty slots 4 times, because my brain kept insisting there must be a logical answer. There wasn't one I could make fit. I packed up and I finished the loop. Not because I was brave, because I didn't know what else to do, and the alternative was sitting alone in those woods waiting for something I couldn't name. I moved fast. I cut the last night short and came out a day early. I filed a report at the ranger station. A missing permit holder at W14. A man who had no booking, no real name I could confirm, who was gone before sunrise. The ranger listened, wrote things down, said they'd look into it. 3 weeks later, my brother called me. He'd gotten a group text, one of those backcountry forum notification systems, where people share trip reports for specific permit areas. Someone had posted a report for W14. They'd mentioned a great conversation with another solo hiker at the site. Described the hiker, described what he was wearing, described the gear on his pack. The name they used was mine. I went back through the permit system because I still had my login, and the confirmation number for my original trip was tied to my account. And when I searched my name in the public trip registry, a feature I'd never used, never even knew existed, there it was, my name, a new booking, W14, 3 weeks after my trip. Then, a booking 2 weeks after that for W16, which was the second night of my original loop. Then, W9, which was night 3. My route, my exact route, in order, spaced out over 3 months. I contacted the Forest Service. I contacted the Permit Systems Administrative Line. I filed a formal identity concern with the Ranger District. I was transferred 4 times. The bookings were made with my name and a slightly altered email, 1 character off from mine, the kind of thing that reads correctly at a glance. The credit card attached to the account wasn't mine. They canceled the remaining bookings. They flagged the account. Nobody has been able to tell me who made them. The photo never turned up. The emergency contact card never turned up. I've changed my brother's number. I've changed my permit account password. I've added 2-factor authentication to everything. I haven't gone back. I've been on a lot of solo trips. I've camped alone in places where cell service doesn't exist and the nearest person is 12 miles of trail away. I've always felt fine with that. safe in the specific way that comes from knowing exactly where you are and trusting that no one else does. What I know now, and what I haven't quite figured out how to stop thinking about, is that somewhere out there, someone is still walking my route, following the exact path I planned in my living room alone on a Tuesday night in January, tracing it one campsite at a time, and using my name to do it.